So let us begin by chanting Asatoma Satkamya. Please put all your mics on mute if you don't mind. Asatoma Satkamya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Let us offer our pranams at the lotus feet of all Gurus and Mahatmas who illumine our paths. May their grace and blessings light the lamp of awareness within us. So friends, the monkey jar trap. All of you will be familiar with the parable of the monkey and the jar. I think the slides are not changing because of some issue. So anyway, I'll be continuing with the parable. Let's see if things can be set right. So we all know this story. We have heard it as children. Maybe we drew our own inferences or conclusions, or some moral was given to us. So just remembering the parable, there was this monkey catcher in the olden days. You know, people would catch monkeys, teach them tricks, and then take them around in the street performing in the village square or in front of people's houses. And because people were happy to watch these tricks, you must remember those were the days when there were no movies and there was no TV and no entertainment, the kind of entertainment we have now, the glut of entertainment, that was not there. So this was a very nice diversion for people. They liked to look at it. So somebody would go around in the end with a cap or a bowl or something, and people would put in whatever they wanted for what they thought, whatever it is worth or whatever they could afford, that they would contribute. So for this, many times, monkey catchers would go and catch monkeys. They would go to a forest or a grove where there were lots of monkeys. Monkeys are very agile. You know, they jump from tree to tree, branch to branch. It's so difficult to catch a monkey because it's not tame, it's wild. So how will you catch a monkey? So what they used to do was that they would keep a very narrow-mouthed jar. A narrow-mouthed jar. Inside that, they would keep peanuts or some banana or something. And that jar would be tied to a tree with a rope and left there. So the same thing happened in this parable. And people would come and the different monkeys would come. They would peer inside the jar. They can see there's a nice ripe big banana there. And many monkeys went away just looking at it. But this one monkey came and he put his hand inside. He wanted the banana, so he caught hold of it. And we know what happened because when he put his hand in, it was not fisted up like this. So he could slip it into the jar. But when he held on to the banana, because the hand was a fist and the banana is also very big and long, he was not able to remove his hand. And then he went around and round the tree, he screeched, he did all kinds of things, but he was not able to free himself. So we know that what he could have done to free himself, right? He just had to let go of the banana. But that didn't occur to him because the banana was very important. He wanted it. So he is caught now. The monkey catcher can catch him. Now this parable has several metaphors. What are those metaphors? First, the monkey. Now ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ ಮರ್ಕಟ ಮನಸ್ಸು. The monkey is our own mind, because the mind is so difficult to control, constantly churning out thoughts. Even when we don't want it to churn out thoughts. When we want it to be attentive, it runs around here and there and everywhere. So when we want it to generate ideas, it becomes still. So mind is like a monkey which we find difficult to control. The jar, the narrow mouth jar, is the individuality that all of us have. We all identify with the body, mind, and intellect. If somebody says, give me a few details about yourself, can you introduce yourself? We begin by saying, this is my name, this is my profession, I was born here, these people were my parents, etc., etc. So everything is with respect to the body, mind, or intellect, my intellectual qualifications, my educational degrees. Everything is with respect to body, mind, or intellect. Then the banana. The banana is apparent happiness. We keep thinking, oh, this will give me happiness, that will give me happiness. I add on a few more degrees, I'll be so happy. If I get married, I'll be happy. If I buy a new house, I'll be happy. If I get a cup of coffee, oh, Paramananda, I'm so happy. So we keep thinking each thing that attracts us, our happiness lies in acquiring that. Then the space. Why is the jar useful? Because it has space inside it. If it didn't have space, if a jar was a solid thing, it would not be very useful to us. Any vessel is useful to us because of the space inside. We can use the space to do things, right? So the space inside the jar is also constantly connected to the space outside the jar. Is the space inside the jar in any way different from the space outside the jar? It's not different, right? So in the parable, this space inside the jar, you can call it Atma, or the self that is actually vivifying the body, mind, and intellect individually. The space outside is Brahman. So actually the space inside the jar and outside the jar are ever connected. They are both the same. This is just for us to understand, that's all. So the space is the self. And the rope. Remember, there was a rope that was tying the pot to the tree so that the monkey can't carry the pot away anywhere. So that rope is just an illusion. What kind of illusion is it? It is an illusion created by the mind which says, I am bound. I am bound. I have to free myself. So that is the rope. And the rope is tied with 3 knots. We'll see those 3 knots are. What those 3 knots are, we'll see in just a moment. The tree, what is the nature of a tree? The tree was to which the rope is tied. A tree normally will have flowers, and then those will turn into some kind of pods, and seeds will fall down. And from those seeds, new trees will grow. So the tree symbolizes the cycle of rebirth. Again and again we are born because of unfulfilled desires. Because I feel I am the body, mind, and intellect. So the minute the subtle body, the mind, Vijnanamaya Kosha, they shed away one body. That means when one body is discarded, it dies. Immediately, my subtle body, the mind and intellect, they want to find another body to inhabit. because it's not comfortable. Its identity is with the body. So just like we are not comfortable being without a house, suddenly if the landlord evicts us, we are not happy to stay on the street. We immediately look for another house or some temporary accommodation till we can rent one more place. So like that, we keep on looking for body after body. That is the cycle of rebirth. As long as we identify with the body, I think I am the body, I will keep on looking for more bodies to inhabit. And the three knots with which the monkey catcher had tied the rope. Those three knots, the Upanishads and Puranas tell us, they are ignorance or avidya, desire or kama, and doership or karma. So we'll be going in more detail to find out what each of these three knots symbolizes.
So you switch to normal. Escape. Second slide.
Okay, this is the slide I think all of you missed looking at last time. So here we see, here is a tree. You can hear me, right? So this is the tree, and this is the pot, narrow neck pot in which the banana is there. The pot is tied to the tree with three knots. The monkey has put its hand into the pot. So here in this slide we see more detail. The monkey is actually holding the banana. We can see that, trying to take its hand out but not ready to let go of the banana. And we see the three knots also here. So moving on to the next slide. We are coming to the first granthi. Granthi in Sanskrit means only knot. So don't get confused with any terminology. It's not so important. So the first knot is ignorance or avidya. Avidya actually has two meanings. One meaning of avidya is ignorance. Another meaning of avidya is something that does not exist. So ignorance about my true nature. We understood that there is space inside the jar, outside the jar. So there is no place where space is not there, taking a physical example. In the same way, there is nowhere that the self is not present. Self is everywhere, all the time. And I am the self. Therefore, I am infinite. The self is Sat-Chit Ananda, it is existence, consciousness, and bliss. So my true nature is bliss. It is infinite bliss. It is not a happiness that comes and goes, stays for a few moments. It's a rare visitor. It has to come through some vehicle like coffee or tea or good things to eat or friends that I meet. I associate happiness with all of them. It comes and goes. No, but my true nature, if I don't identify with the body, then it is infinite bliss. And how do we know this? Because in deep sleep, Vedanta, as we know, often takes us back to our three states because it doesn't want us to take anything on faith. Vedanta wants us to understand through our own experience. So the Avasthatraya, the three states, the waking, dream, and deep sleep. So the Upanishad is telling us, Upanishads tell us, in deep sleep, there is no body, there is no world, there is no name, there is no limitation. You are infinite, you are present, you are blissful. So when you go to sleep, when you slip into deep sleep where there is no dream, then you are the self. That is your pure nature. But when we wake up, what do? We discount sleep. We say, "Arey, there was nothing in my sleep." So we are so used to having things. We are so used to saying, "I am seeing, I am experiencing, and there are things for me to see, there are things for me to experience." So we are so strongly identified with this seer and seen relationship. When this is not present in the dream state, when we are pure awareness in the dream state, As soon as we wake up, we discount the dream state and we say, this waking state is the actual state for me. This is the real state. So this is what is called avidya. The seers are telling us, because you are forgetting your true nature, you think that as soon as you wake up, you are the body and there is the world around you. So immediately you think, I am this body and that is the world. So there are two entities. And the world has so many objects, it has so many people. So instead of seeing everybody as a manifestation of the self, I think each person is different from me, each object is different from me. Therefore, I think that there is plurality around me. So this is called avidya. Forgetting my true nature of infinite bliss is called avidya. It is said that once a person went to Ramana Ashram, and that person was going there for the first time. He had never seen Ramana Maharshi. And when he went there, Ramana Maharshi was not in the darshan hall. He was actually outside busy with some work. So since this person didn't know who Ramana Maharshi was, he went to Sri Ramana himself and he tapped him on the shoulder and he said, where is Ramana? So then Ramana Maharshi laughed at him and he said, Ramana is there, look. And that person looked. There was just one big brass vessel over there. And on that was written a name Ramana. So probably some devotee had given it to Bhagavan. And you know, when we buy vessels, even in a steel shop or something, many of us, we get a name, our own names inscribed, or if we are giving it as a gift, we get the name of the person to whom we are giving inscribed on the vessel. So like that, somebody had probably inscribed Bhagavan's name and given it. So Bhagavan pointed at that vessel and he said, see, that and this, they are the same. He pointed to his own body and he said, this body and that vessel, there is no difference between them. At least, you know, in that vessel, the name Ramana is written on that vessel. So you can see, read it, it's written there. Even that is not written on this body. Therefore, this body is only a vessel and it is in the self. Why are you giving so much importance to the body? That is what he meant to say. So, going on to the next slide, there is a small story. So, in this story, there was a very intelligent dog. This dog you can see in one picture. Animations are not working, sorry, because something is not going right with the slides today. So I'll just explain each picture one by one. So there is this picture at the top left-hand corner where you can see, you know, the dog is actually high-fiving with his master. A very intelligent dog, well-trained. He was playing with his master and his master got a phone call. So he had to attend to the phone call. And while he was talking on the phone, the dog got bored, so it jumped off the divan on which it was sitting. And it started wandering through the house. It was a fairly big house. And the dog knew the house because he had grown up there. But there was one room in that house into which he was never allowed. The door was always closed. And that day it so happened, the door is open. The dog is very happy. He's curious. So he went into the room. And in the room he saw there is a big mirror. It was because of this he had not been allowed into the room. He's never seen a mirror before. So he went and he sat in front of the mirror. We see in that picture also. And he's seeing another dog. He barked and the dog is also barking. He raised his paw. That dog is also raising its paw as though it is shaking hands with him. And he thought, this looks like a friendly dog. There's another dog there. So let me go and play with that dog. Then he butted the mirror with his head because he wanted to get through. He thought it's some kind of barrier and he can get through and play with the other dog. And we know what will happen if you butt the mirror very hard. It's not very strongly fixed in this house. So the mirror fell down and it shattered into many bits. You can see there's a picture with a shattered mirror. So every piece of that mirror now started reflecting the dog. Earlier there was just one reflection of the dog. Now there are multiple reflections, as many reflections as there are pieces of the mirror. And if he barks, every dog there barks. If he moves, every dog there is moving. So he became very excited and he started barking continuously. And his master thought, what's happened to my dog today? He generally is so well behaved. Master came and he saw him in the room and he saw the broken mirror. Immediately he carried the dog out because he was scared the pieces of mirror might pierce the dog's foot. Somebody swept up all the glass and it was thrown away. So now we come to some questions from this parable. When all the pieces of glass were swept and thrown away, did anything happen to the original dog? So first we saw the dog is looking at the mirror, there is one reflection. So in the morning, when we wake up, each one of us, from deep sleep, just imagine it has happened to you thousands and thousands of times, literally till now. You're just waking up from nice deep sleep. Okay? There's a deep feeling of bliss, contentment, peace inside you. You're just aware of that peace. Imagine it's a holiday. In the night, you were already aware it's a holiday. There is nothing urgent for me in the morning. I can sleep as long as I like. I don't have to set an alarm. So I know all that when I went to sleep, and then I'm waking up from that sleep. So I'm very relaxed, just aware of the peace. So at that moment, I'm just existence, consciousness, bliss. I am. Bhagavan calls it I am. Vedanta calls it I am. I know I exist at that moment and I know that I exist. So I'm deeply content with my existence. Then a few minutes or a few seconds, immediately I am goes and attaches itself to the body. It says, I am this body, I am Vani, I am Meenakshi, or I am Vasu, or I am Malti, and I am a woman, or I am a man, I am a wife, I am a husband, I am a mother, I have to cook in the kitchen, I have children, I am an architect, I have to go to the site, or I have a client meeting today. All that will come. So what happened? First, there was only this wonderful feeling, I exist, not attached to anything. Then when the dogs started saying, if it had realized that is me, that reflection, let us say the dog realized that is my own reflection, then that is like attaching to the body. This body is me. Then the mirror breaks into a million pieces and every piece has a reflection of the same dog. So that is plurality, this entire world with all the people in it, all the objects in it. But everything has my own reflection. If I know that I am the self, then it is the self that is manifesting as the entire world. But out of ignorance, if I attach myself only to this body, if I think I am limited, if I forget that I am bliss, then all those reflections appear to be something else to me, something other than me, something different from me. What do we see in this slide? We see Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu is in a deep state of yoga nidra, and from him so many bubbles are emanating. Let us say all of them are atoms and molecules emanating from him. And if you look closely, in every bubble or in every atom of creation, you see an image of Vishnu himself, just like as in every piece of glass there was a reflection of the dog itself. In every bubble, there is a reflection of the Creator himself. So every bubble is the creator himself. Normally, when we are creating something, a common example given in Vedanta is a mud pot. So if a mud pot is in front of us, it has two causes. So one cause is the material cause. The material cause or the upadana karana is mud, because it is made up of mud. But there was a potter who made the pot. So this potter is called the efficient cause. That means it is through him, he made the pot, he shaped the mud into a pot. So it has two causes. One is the material cause and one is the efficient cause. But here, upadana karana and nimitta karana. But here, so far as the world is concerned, the entire world is nothing but the creator himself. There is no material cause here. That is what the Upanishads tell us, Vedanta tell us, Vedas tell us. This entire universe, the cosmos, has no material cause because it is made out of the self. The Brahman himself is manifesting as the universe. It is not made out of any other matter other than Brahman. Brahman himself is manifesting as the entire cosmos. We'll not go into the details of it. And scientists nowadays, many quantum scientists are also telling us the substratum of this entire creation is consciousness. Everything is coming from consciousness. So there is some point where Vedanta and science is actually meeting today. So this is because we forget that this entire universe, if I am Brahman, I am the self, and this world is the self, then this entire universe is nothing but me. I am the self, the world is the self, therefore I am the world. But when I forget that equation, and I limit myself to this body, immediately I feel incomplete. I feel I have to look somewhere else for happiness. So this is, there was a lot of animation in this slide which was making it interesting, but we'll do without it. So kama is the second knot. What is kama? Kama is desire. When I feel incomplete, automatically I feel something else is required to complete me. And that is how desire is born. So desire functions in two ways. One, I like certain things. So when I acquire them, I feel that I become complete. For a few moments, I feel complete. For a few minutes, maybe for a few days, maybe for a few weeks, depending upon how momentous that desire was for me. I feel complete. If I have nice things to eat, I feel complete. If I have, then I get bored in life, I think, what should I do? Let me join a professional course. Let me become a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. Then I feel more complete for some time. Then I think all day long, I have to keep on working from morning till night. There's nothing but work. Life is becoming so boring. So maybe if I get a mate, maybe if I get married, then life will become more interesting. So I think marriage will complete me and I get married. So then I think children will complete me. Then I think getting a new house will complete me. So it goes on and on. It's endless. Each time, the amazing thing is, each time I think the next thing will complete me. So that is the amazing thing. Now, if you have been living for 50 years or 60 years or 40 years or whatever is our age, even after so many years, I still believe, including me, that the next thing that comes along will give me permanent happiness. It will give me a feeling of completeness that will stay with me. Such a big mirage. And still we get taken in all the time. Then we have dislike. Like, we try to grab onto things. Dislike, we try to keep those things away. I don't want suffering. You know, who wants suffering? I don't want suffering. I don't want disease. I don't want death. I don't want bad things to happen to me. I don't want my life to be boring. So, like and dislike, they function. That is the second knot, that is kama. So I think that my happiness lies in possessions or relationships, success, name, fame, all the things that I can get in the world, I tie it to happiness in my mind. And I think my happiness is coming from there. But for a jnani, somebody who is always abiding in the self, who is always aware that he is Satchitananda, he is aware that he is infinitude, he is aware that he is happiness, he is bliss. So for him, if something falls into his hands, so to speak, whatever he gets in life will just flow through him to the world. Because for him, he and the world are not separate. Everybody in the world is an embodiment of the self. Whatever comes flows through him and keeps on going away into the world to whoever is in need. So that is the way a jnani functions. He neither grabs nor does he try to keep anything away. We come to the third Granthi. Actually, this was a very nice animated GIF where this lady was juggling a lot of balls. So you have seen jugglers. You have seen jugglers in the circus. You have seen them on TV. So you know, just imagine that there is a juggler in front of you, juggling, say, about 10 or 12 balls, expert juggler. Nothing is falling to the ground. Each time the ball is successfully caught, thrown up. So at a time there are some 2 balls in the hand, that means another 8 balls in the air, all at different heights. Continuously this juggler is catching and throwing, catching and throwing. So what does this have to do with the third knot or the third Granthi called karma? Now in a way, all 3 knots are not really different also, because one leads to the other, that leads to the other. They're all very integrated, in fact. So because I believe that the world is separate from me, because I forget that my true nature of bliss, and because I identify with the body, mind and intellect. Whenever we say body, we are referring to all 5 koshas. So because I have that, hold that belief so strongly, this third knot begins. When I feel that I am the body, mind or intellect, anything that is done by this body or mind or intellect, I think I am doing it. And Upanishads tell us, when you believe that you are the doer, you are doing something, then automatically the fruits of that action will also come back to you. This is what we call the law of karma. So whenever I am doing something, generally I do it with some kind of an intention. So when I was looking at this juggler throwing all the balls in the air, I remembered a story that I had read when I was, I think, in middle school. So in that story, there is this very naughty boy called Tom. And one day he is visited by a gremlin. A gremlin is a magical being with magical powers, but they're very mischievous. They are not benevolent. They try to create mischief in the lives of the people whom they visit. So this gremlin has come. He came through a moonbeam into the room of this boy Tom, who is just woken up in the middle of the night. And this boy says, "Hey, you are a magical being, right? So you should give me a lot of wishes." So the gremlin is very happy. Okay, now good opportunity for me to create mayhem in this boy's life. So he says, fine, I'll give you 30 wishes. Ask them. And this boy says, okay, whenever I want, I'll keep asking. And the gremlin says, remember one thing. Your wishes will not always bring you the joy you think. Just remember that. It can happen at very inconvenient times. And it may actually cause you a lot of embarrassment also. So this boy says, I don't care. I've read so many fairy tales where there are only 3 wishes and they're so happy, and you've given me 30 wishes. So I'm going to be super happy. And he starts making wishes. So one of the wishes, I don't remember the entire story, not required also. One of the wishes is that this Tom says, is very fond of jam, and he is in a place where jam is rationed. So he says, I want amazing quantities of jam, humongous quantities of jam, so much jam that I can't eat it. That much jam I should be having. So next day he gets up, and when he gets up, he finds his whole bed is full of jam. His pajamas have become jammy. Jam is everywhere on the floor. Jam is on the corridor outside. Jam is on the staircase. And then he's staying in a boarding school. So the headmaster comes and catches him and he makes him clean up all the jam. So he got as much jam, more than he could eat, but not in a very nice way. So he also wishes the cook will be cooking very bad food. So he wishes, let my cook fall sick and not be able to cook for some days. The cook falls sick one day, she can't cook. But then Tom is sent to kitchen duty. So from morning till night, he has to help in the kitchen. He has to carry meals to the cook. The cook is not appreciative of the meals that he brings. He gets blasted by the cook. And so each and every wish that comes true, most of them at least, turn out to put him into more trouble. So I just took this example because we have, neurologists tell us we have about 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts every day. And out of these thousands of thoughts, many of them are, idle thinking. We keep wishing. Oh, I wish, I had that sari. I wish this would happen. I wish that would happen. I wish that person, who created so much trouble for me, that person should get into trouble. So a friend was telling me the other day, she was ill-treated by her mother-in-law. And she used to wish often at that time, my mother-in-law should suffer. She should understand what suffering is. But now her mother-in-law lives with her. Her mother-in-law is suffering a lot from health issues. And she has to take care of her mother-in-law. So it is suffering for both of them. So in life also, the wishes that we make, our desires, which we feel I am doing and I want the result, can manifest in very inconvenient ways for us. At times when we can't really enjoy them, or they can create more problems. I'm not saying it's that for everything, but a good many of them can manifest like that. So it is like a juggler. Every situation we have in our life, every relationship is our own, the fruit of our own previous karma. So we are juggling balls like that, and we are not very skillful. Most of us are not very skillful. So we drop balls, they roll away from us. We hit somebody else with those balls. So our life, a good bit of our life is a lot of managing. So this is the third knot, because I feel I'm an individual, and everything that I do, I am the doer, and I want the fruits of my action. Therefore, I get caught in that karma jala. It is like a web. I'm just caught, and I feel that I'm suffering. So that is why Bhagavad Gita says, offer all your fruits to me. Offer it to me. Don't say it should come back to you. Address it to me. Let it come to me. And then whatever you deserve, I will give at the right time. So we say, after reading that, oh, I surrender all my fruits to the Lord. But after saying, I did well in that job interview, but I don't know what will happen, I surrender it at your feet. Okay, I feel very nice. But after 5 minutes, I again start thinking, oh, what if that job doesn't come to me? That means I have not surrendered. If I have surrendered, I will no longer think about it even. So surrendering fruits at the feet of the Lord is not that easy. We think we have surrendered, but in fact, we go back again and again like a dog that has an itch. We go back and keep worrying about it, keep thinking about it. That means we have not surrendered. So how to escape from these three granthis? Or is there some solution for us? So this had, I can't show you what is behind this picture. So behind this picture is a burning candle. just briefly visiting the concept of nirvana of Buddha. So the meaning of nirvana, Sri Narasimha Prabhuji often tells us, nirvana means extinguishing individuality, the flame of individuality. That means the strong concept that I hold, it's nothing but a thought which I have nurtured from lifetimes and in which I believe strongly. I invest completely in that thought that I am the body, I am an individual. So that is like a candle burning, and that flame needs to be snuffed out. So if that flame needs to be snuffed out, we have to become aware of our true identity. I have to become aware that I am the infinite self. I am bliss. I am Satchitananda. When I become aware of my true nature, then automatically the flame of individuality becomes redundant. It gets snuffed out. So snuffing out or extinguishing this flame, this belief, letting go of the belief that I am the body, mind and intellect, that is called nirvana. So this shloka, which is from Brahmajnanavali Mala, this is the last shloka in the Brahmajnanavali Mala. So it says, Antar Jyotihi, Bahir Jyotihi, Pratyak Jyotihi, Parat Paraha, Jyotir Jyotihi, Swayam Jyotihi, Atma Jyotihi, Shivosmyaham. Antar Jyotihi, the self is the light within me. The light within me, the light of awareness within me, because of which I am aware of my thoughts and feelings, because of which I am aware of my dreams when I sleep. So that is the Antar Jyoti. Bahir Jyoti, the self which I am, because it is awareness, because it is continuous, because it has no birth and death, because there is no change in it ever. So it is also the light, the awareness, because of which I am able to see the external world around me. Bahir Jyoti. Pratyak Jyoti, when I am in deep sleep, when there is neither the world nor dreams, still I am. That is my pure state of being. That is Pratyak Jyoti. I am pure awareness during deep sleep. Paraparaha, this light of awareness, which is the self, is greater than the greatest. Jyotir Jyotihi, it is the flame of all flames. Every other flame, whether it is sun or moon or a candle or electric light or whatever we are comparing it to, all of them are lit up only by the light of awareness. If I am not aware, electric light can be burning, but I can't see it. I'm not talking about not having eyes, but having awareness. I may be eating something, but if I have to become aware of it, the faculty of awareness, faculty of witnessing, faculty of knowing, that has to function. So when somebody explains something to me and I say, oh, I know now, I understood, I know that person, all that, every single thing of knowing, the experience of knowing, the experience of understanding, the experience of being aware, everything is because of the self. Swayam Jyotihi, this wonderful light of the self is self-luminous. It doesn't have to be lit up by something else. Give me a candle, let me see if the self is there. No, I can see the candle because of the self. So the world exists because of the self. Avidya means something that has no independent existence. That is the second meaning. So here, self has independent existence. The world has dependent existence. This body has dependent existence. If the self is removed, the body, the world, nothing exists. Atma Jyotihi. This is the wonderful blazing light of the self. Shivosmyaham. I am that self. I am that auspicious self. This is what Sri Shankaracharya writes in the last shloka of the Brahmajnanavali Mala. It can be found on the internet. It is also sung very beautifully by people. You could listen to it. So when that happens, again, because the animations don't work, this slide is not working the way it's supposed to do. So I'm first revisiting one of the earlier slides. I am different, the world is different. That is avidya. But when I realize that I am the self, when I am a jnani, for a jnani, what happens? I am the self. The world is nothing but a manifestation of the self. Therefore, I am the world. So, this entire thing actually is based on one shloka of the Mundaka Upanishad, which says, Bhidyate Hridaya Grantihi, Chidyante Sarva Samshayaha, Shriyante Chasya Karmani, Tasmin Drishte Paravare. When he or the self is seen as high and low, that means both as cause and effect. The self is the cause, the self is the effect. The effect is the world around us, the entire creation. So the self and creation are not different. It is both he alone. So when I see that, when I understand that, when I abide as the self, the knot of the heart here means the intellect. It is the intellect that holds this concept, I am the body, mind and intellect, very strongly. So this knot, a very, very tight knot, you know how difficult it is to untie. But the minute I understand and I am convinced, the intellect is convinced that there is only the self, there is nothing other than the self, then all my doubts vanish. My individuality, my feeling that I am an individual, it goes. Instead of being a limited individual, I am the unlimited self. And all the karma of that individual is consumed, because karma pertains to the individual account. When the account is closed, when that person no longer exists, his karma is also not anymore existent. It has no connection with him. So all his karma is also consumed. So this is the meaning of the shloka of the Mundaka Upanishad. Here in this slide, we see there is a girl sleeping. Look at the central picture. There is a girl sleeping there. And as she is sleeping, she has a dream. Just like all of us have dreams every day, she is having a dream. So in that dream, she is having a lot of difficulty in life. All kinds of difficulties. It's in her dream. In her dream, she's having all those difficulties. And one day, she is weeping and her mother takes her out. They're living in a beautiful country like Switzerland. And her mother takes her out to a very serene place, snow-capped mountains and a beautiful lake and a forest. And they're sitting there. She wants to calm the girl. So her mother is saying, my dear child, why are you weeping? This entire life is a dream. You're getting so upset because of what is happening. But this whole life is a dream. Your body is just a part of the dream, like those mountains, like the forest, like the lake, like me also. I'm also a part of your dream. So just wake up. The best thing you can do is wake up. Otherwise, you will keep being unhappy. The only way to get out of this kind of suffering, wake up. The minute you wake up, your dream will disappear. And then you will realize, Hare, I was just lying down in my bed and having a dream. I have not become bankrupt. I have not lost my family. I have not lost my friend. I have not got bad reputation because of something that happened. All that was in the dream. But I was the dreamer. I was not the dream. So wake up. Mother is telling her daughter. So just like in our dream, Vedanta says, in your dream, everything is actually you. Your own mind is manifesting as the mountain, as the forest, as the lake, as your mother, as your father, whoever comes into your dream. It is your mind that is manifesting as everybody. But you will realize that only when you wake up. And so the Guru comes into our life. You look at the bottommost slide. The Guru comes into our life just like the mother was telling the girl, wake up from your dream, like that. The Guru comes and he says, my child, do you think you are suffering? You are not suffering. Don't worry. This is all a dream. The self is everywhere. You are the self. But we don't understand. We can't understand. So he starts telling us, Neti Neti. You see this body of yours, actually you are not this body. You are not the world also. Nothing around you there don't belong to you. All your possessions don't belong to you. Relatives don't belong to you. And we say, why? How? So he says, remember when you were in deep sleep last night, who was there with you? Was your body there? Did you know your name in deep sleep? Did you have your parents with you? In deep sleep, nobody else was there. Your body was not there. Your mind was not there. The world was not there. But you were there. And you were infinite. You were peace. You were bliss. That is your true nature. In the waking state, with the right knowledge, just abide as the self. Go back, keep identifying with the self. Keep identifying with infinity. So every time you say I in a conversation, don't think of the body, start associating with the infinite self. Do it all the time. So if we have that conviction, then we can do it all the time. So revisit the parable, the monkey jar trap. Now the monkey is saying, what can I do? I'm so helpless. I'm suffering. I'm bound. I cannot escape from this. What is in my hands after all? But literally in this parable, all the monkey has to do is remove its hand from the jar. Just let go of the banana and withdraw his hand from the jar. He doesn't have to untie the rope. He doesn't have to break the jar. He doesn't have to do anything. He just has to let go of the banana, withdraw his hand, and he is free. So he himself, who binds him? Who binds whom in this life? We are binding ourselves, says Vedanta. You are binding yourself because with your intellect you are holding on so strongly to this individuality. I am the body. Every day you have the experience when you go to sleep that you are not the body. But you discount that experience and you hold on, just like the monkey holding on to the banana, clutching it so firmly, so frantically. You hold on. So what is this frantically holding on? Continuously these incessant thoughts that we create in the mind. That is required to maintain this individuality. All 70,000 thoughts that go through our mind every day. It is all about our individuality, about the body or mind or intellect or anything that is related to the body, mind or intellect. All the time we are thinking. So this thought shield, that entire pot actually, the sides of the pot, here it is made of mud, but within us it is made of thoughts only. All the time we need this incessant thought. So how frantically we are holding on. If the thought stops for some time, it is gone. When I'm in deep sleep, the thoughts have stopped. I've lost my individuality. But the minute I wake up, again and again, I begin. I think frantically so that that individuality is retained intact. I am the body, I am the body, I am the body. So the Guru says, all that you need is very simple, extremely simple. You just need to understand your true nature. You are the infinite, unlimited self. You have proof of it every day in your deep sleep. Nobody has to come and prove it to you. You yourself know. So in your waking state, just abide in the state of being. Instead of keeping on identifying with the body, take the option. You have two options. You can continue to identify with the body. You can continue to hold on to the banana like the monkey is holding on. You can hold on to your individuality, or You can just drop it and relax. If I ask all of you to make a fist like this, very tight, and I tell you keep on holding it like this for 5 minutes, maybe you will do it. If I say 1 hour, you'll say how much longer, how much longer? Why should I hold it like this? Just because you say, it's hurting, I say, I want to let it go. I want to relax my fingers. So self-abidance is complete relaxation actually. Just letting go all that frantic mental activity. Thought. If you let it go, everything is relaxed. You are infinite. You are bliss. So this is called nididhyasa. Shravana, listening to the truth. Manana, contemplating on the truth. In the light of the truth, I keep examining my conditioning, my belief systems, and I start discarding. That is called viveka. That is called vairagya actually. Ultimate vairagya is letting go of individuality. It is not about monkhood. It is not about renouncing home, renouncing objects, renouncing wealth. It is about renouncing that limited individuality to which we are holding. So letting go is so easy. Instead of holding your hand, gripping your hand like this in a fist. We have been doing it for lifetimes. Don't you think it's time we relax that grip and let go? So remember your true nature. Can you close your eyes for a minute? After Shravana and Manana, we do Nididhyasa. Just keep your spine straight. Just take 2 or 3 more minutes of your time. Close your eyes, lightly close your eyes. And just recall how you felt in the state of deep sleep. Sahaja Samadhi, or continuous abidance in the self, even as we go on doing our duties in the outer world, as we play our roles efficiently in the outer world, but all the time aware that I am the self. That is called waking sleep. So with your eyes closed, that beautiful, peaceful feeling, come into complete alignment with what is, and recollect your state of deep sleep. The peace, the bliss, complete relaxation, the no otherness. There was nobody other than you in your deep sleep. There was no boredom. Every day you go into deep sleep, yet you're not bored, because that is your true nature, your being. No thoughts, no body, no world. You are the light of awareness. You are eternal. Neither joy nor sorrow can touch you. You are pure bliss. Your pure awareness. The world appears within you and disappears within you. Whether the world exists or not, you continue to exist forever. You have always existed. Whenever you feel like it, slowly open your eyes. Even with your eyes open, stay there, stay still. During the day, whenever you have even a few minutes, you can revisit this stillness, this infinitude, this bliss and peace. I thank each and every one of you for being a satsangi in this session. Your presence has given me immense inspiration. Thank you all so much. I hand over to Vasu.